Well, everyone, welcome to the Restless Hearts podcast and show. We got a treat for you. We're trying to change things up a little bit over the summer, where we have some conversations with some friends of ours and just get exposed to some of the things that they think they're thinking, the things that they're experiencing that kind of intersected with some of the stuff that we've already talked about on the show. And so I have a friend. He's a new friend, really. Like Phil and I have just kind of connected over the pandemic, over social media, and him and I hung out at Woods Coffee, as you do in the Pacific Northwest, down in Bellevue, a couple of weeks ago, and it's been a joy to learn from him, hear from him, and just literally most of the time we're just texting back and forth about books that we're reading. So Phil, tell us about who you are.
Yeah, I mean, I'm grateful to be on. Hey, my name is Phil Lewis, and I'm the high school director at University Presbyterian Church here in Seattle. I mean, I love the Pacific Northwest. I especially love days like these where it's super sunny outside.
Yes, let's go.
I mean, just as Garret was saying, I love reading books. You exchange books and articles, and so it makes for such a good time. I love coffee. I love going for walks with my wife, and we're big foodies. So if you ever want a food list and you're in Seattle and you're like, what should I eat? We have a pretty robust list of food places that we'd love for you to try that, would be hopefully what you're looking for. So,
I love it. Wait, give me your, where's your go-to, dinner spot? Not you're going to break the bank, but nice dinner in
for
Seattle.
Sure.
Where are you going to go?
Oh, man. Nice dinner spot. Oh man, that's such a tough one. I think I'd probably go to, man, I almost want to ask her right now, but I think our go-to would probably be Babar. There's it's a Vietnamese spot in Seattle that's it's in Cap Hill. I think it's in the U Village. And then I think there's another one somewhere, but it's really good. We always just get kind of like different family style plates, some wings, some imperial rolls, they just do so many good stuff, and
so
it's super affordable.
Small things.
Yeah, you know how it is.
Yes,
so
let's go.
So we'll do that if we're looking for something good, for something that doesn't, like you said, break the bank. So
let's go.
Yeah.
Okay, so typically when we're all sitting around the couch on the Restless Hearts podcast, our co-host Kenna, she'll ask us just we don't typically know the question, and we just kind of have to react. But so here's the question I have for you. Okay. I did let you know, so I'm not trying to deceive anyone. I did let you know, so you got a chance to think about it. Yeah. All right, so I mean, this is a standard. I feel like a standard question, but you're on an island with your crew. You have a community there, obviously. For sure. Okay. What is the one book you can bring? The one musical album that you're going to bring, and the one movie you're going to have for the rest of your life? Oh yeah, and you can't say the Bible. You have a Bible, so it's I guess your second book.
Yeah. I think one movie I'd bring is Lion King. I've watched it probably 30 times, and I'm not tired of it. And
so the animated version?
Yes.
Or the most okay.
The animated version that came out in the 90s that they reran it in theaters multiple times because it was that good.
Yeah, Matthew Broderick is an African lion.
Yeah. That's right. Oh, it's just all the things. So I probably do, oh my gosh, I can't. That's so hilarious. I probably do that movie. Yeah, Lion King for my movie. And then I think book-wise, I'd do Strength to Love by Martin Luther King Jr.
Let's go.
Amazing book that for me, it's close to Bible in so many ways, in the ways that I think just the conversations that he's having and the letters that he writes in that book is just so good. So good. And then you said, what was the next one? You said favorite album.
Yes.
Okay. I actually don't know the name of this album. You might know because it's Coldplay, but it's the album where the songs Ink, Magic, I think, do you know what I'm talking about? It's
yes, bro, Coldplay.
It's
Ink.
It's Ghost Stories.
The
Ghost Stories album.
Just about to say. Okay.
Yeah. So I I realized that I don't know if I just missed Coldplay when I was growing up. I think I wasn't like a part of my network of
Those albums you were listening to?
yeah. And so like
You
I
just
kind of came,
discovered them. Like Coldplay is like a recent
yeah.
discovery for you.
Oh, 100%. Like I know, like, you know, the songs that you listen to when you're in like the stores, and they're
Sure.
like, the songs are everywhere.
Yeah.
But like I just started like really listening to them. And this is probably an album that I'll just toss on and drive to, and I could put it on repeat for days.
All the
So
time. I saw Coldplay
yeah.
in concert when I was probably younger than you, at the Pepsi Center in
Wow.
Denver, Colorado. It was a fun show. My friend PJ and I went. It was great. It was
Yeah.
so much fun. They did put on
Hmm.
a good show. I mean, they just want to be
Okay.
U2 in concert, which is fine.
Right.
But I haven't seen U2, so like
Right.
I'll be like, that was good. All right, so I got 3 questions for you, because
Okay.
I would just love, because these are actually some things, like you and I, last time we hung out, like our conversation went everywhere.
For
And these
sure.
were 3 things, like I was like, oh man, I didn't get to ask Phil about these 3 things.
Yeah.
So these are 3 things I want to learn about from you. Okay.
For sure.
First one, like you're a great follow on Instagram, number 1. So we'll make sure,
Appreciate it.
like we'll be sure to get all your handles and stuff out there for people at the very end. But like, one of the things that I thought was so interesting as you and I started connecting over this time was that you love the outdoors. Like I'm a person of like I love the outdoors as well. But I know that particularly the Black community and people of color have like a really interesting relationship, but like you have a passion
For sure.
for the outdoors personally, but you also have a passion to see like people of color experience the outdoors and the beauty of God's creation and nature.
Yes.
Like where did that desire come from? How did that get cultivated in you? And like, tell us a little bit of that story.
Yeah, I mean, so I think when was it? Probably when I was in elementary school to middle school. Every year, I think the kind of passion came from every year we would take this trip down to Seaside, Oregon, and we'd go to Cannon Beach. And I think that was really something that I really loved, that I just always looked forward to. Whenever we had like a seasonal break during school, we'd go down there and we'd bring our dog and like just hang out on the beach and like walk through the park and be able to do that every break. And that coupled with we lived behind a tree farm that was like in my parents' neighborhood. There's a tree farm right behind us, and every day, close to every day, we would go and play in the back of the tree farm and like ride our bikes through. And like, even though like, and I mean, I think there's a lot of different things that my parents really were intentional about doing, whether it was like going for bike rides around the tree farm and like hanging out back there, or whether it was like we lived kind of close to Mount Rainier, and so then we'd go to Northwest Trek sometimes, or we'd go to Mount Rainier sometimes and go to like the visitor center and kind of walk around and kind of do some of those hikes around there. But I think that kind of was like really the cultivating passion of my outdoor the kind of cultivating space that really led to me being passionate about being outside. And I think it was probably my junior year of high school where I went backpacking for the first time with some friends. And I remember, and it's funny because me and one of my best friends, we were talking about this recently, was that we were on a backpacking trip. And it was me and my friend who's Filipino, and then a white guy. And so we were carrying all the packs because we were just taking turns carrying packs. And we're like, if we have 2 packs, if we only need 2 packs, then
then only carry 2 packs. Anyone that backpacks
Right.
knows, like, don't carry extra weight.
Right. Yeah. Like, let's just do each other a favor and just give each other the space to be able to just be. And so we're walking on the trail. We're kind of like up in I think we're up in Mount Rainier area. So we're kind of walking through, and we just got out from the night, and we're going to a lookout point. And this guy, a white guy, sees us coming and like jokes with my friend and says, "Oh, are they the help?
Whoa.
Like, are they?" Yeah. So like, right. So they, So he suggests, he was like, "Oh, is he," like, he jokes around and he doesn't look at us. Like, the white glance that continues to look at white people in front of them. And so then he's like, "Oh, are they the help?" And my friend doesn't know what to do. He's like, and we're like, and that for the first time for me was like, I didn't know the connotation and the language behind that. So I'm just like, that's weird. That's really backwards. Yeah. But okay. And so then my friend's like, "No, like we're just backpacking through and we're just trying to hit this lookout point and have some coffee and then turn back." And say, "Oh, well, have a good day." And so I think for me, that was like the first encounter that I really had with like, I think undertones, but also overtones of racism
Yes.
in the outdoor space. And I think that really kind of made me realize that like it wasn't a normal thing for people of color to be outside. And if they were with white people, then they must be associated as the help. And I mean, like we know that that goes back to like colonial days when the first like when the people who colonized the United States took people of color around with them, whether it was indigenous or black folks or whatever, like different ethnicities with them, like whether through by means of slavery or by means of servitude, like
Sure.
they took them with them as tech, quote unquote guides, and so or like as like you said. And so I think for me that was really like kind of the point where I was starting to realize that. And I think as I started to get out more and more, and I think working at REI and being able to see the dynamics there, and like with a huge organization that is at the forefront of a lot of good things and a lot of change, but I think really not being able to really address some of the systemic racism that has been, and some of the stories that have been washed away and marginalized. And so yeah, I mean, I'm just really excited about, especially like youth of color, like queer youth of color, like queer youth of color, being able to get outside and be able to be outside and be unashamed. Because I think like we were talking about during our coffee time, I think it's something beautiful that happens when we get to touch and experience creation. I mean, the practice of grounding, like you're literally grounding for 10 minutes a day, literally transforms your whole body. And so then imagine what that does to somebody who's able to get outside and just see the vastness of creation. And so
totally. Talk about like what is you mentioned the practice of grounding. What do you mean like when you say that and then tie it to the outdoors? What does that mean?
Yeah, so I mean, I just want to first give homage and honor to like it's an indigenous practice that I learned from. That is the practice of literally. So you just step outside in grass or in like dirt, like not concrete, just like very natural resources, and just allow your feet to just sit there and like allow your body just settle into the ground that you feel, and just to reconnect with the ground. And that really does something to your body where you're able to reconnect and recalibrate, and just your body just feels like you feel the refreshment that you and you feel that connection back to the earth, and just feel that sense of centeredness. And so
no, that reminds me. So it reminds me of like the idea in Genesis being like we are made from dust, like the very dirt that we are from. Like being in that reminds us that like we are created beings and that we are finite, and we will have a beginning and end, and like that. I think that's just a beautiful thing. It reminds me of, did you ever, like, this will be like on the tangent, but like, did you ever read any Nancy Murphy? She teaches at Fuller. She teaches on, anyway, she has this whole thing, bro. You should read her at some point. I'll send you the book. Is like I said, Phil and I just talked about books.
You guys send it to me.
But she has this whole idea. She's a philosopher at Fuller, and she just talks about spirited bodies. And it's less that the human being is an eternal soul that lives inside a body, but more so like the idea that the ancient Hebraic idea that we are bodies, that we are human bodies, that have eternal significance. But like the same Hebrew word for soul is the Hebrew word nephesh, which actually can mean stomach or throat. You know, like so like that idea of like, yes, there's something that is usness, but it's not in the kind of Western tradition or the Western philosophical tradition, like a disembodied psyche or a disembodied soul. And like, so that just really connects with me with that idea, even though like, and sometimes like some of those wisdom traditions and some of those in a lot of religious traditions, like that grounds so much in what we're thinking. So that's, I love that. Yeah. So like, so what is that like how for you, Phil, then what's it been like to help reintroduce, like you had that introduced to you by your parents, as you introduce that to other people, what has that been like for you to help introduce
Mhm.
others into that space? And what are the things
For
that they're
sure.
learning? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think it's like sharing good news. I think it's sharing the
Yes.
good news that like we are alive and we are, we don't have to be a certain way. We can be the fullness of who God created us to be in open spaces that God created. Like I
Yes.
think that that feels like just sharing good news for me when I invite people into that space of being able to be outside and to have fun and recreate outside. And also too, I think it's humbling because like I think there are stories that I don't know about different lands
Yes.
and different tribes that have been on lands and like the nuances and the history of the land. And so I think it's just a lot of I'm a student. I feel like a
Yes.
student every time, and like like it's there's fun aspects of being a student, but there's also hard aspects where you're like, oh
Sure.
wow, like I have to rephrase my ways of being. But I think and just introducing and being outside with other people of color and just being able to talk about our experiences just feels so healing and like just to be able to not to have to look over your shoulders and be like, man, like is this safe? But like, wow, like I have family around me. Like
Yeah.
I have like a community around me to be able
Yes.
to recreate with and do life with. And
Yeah.
so yeah.
You know, it's so interesting like that. There's almost like in the way that you're talking about, it's like a
Hmm.
redemption of like nature and a
Hmm.
reconvening of the people that were intended to cultivate it, human beings,
Yes.
and how much like systemic sin has actually even
Right.
broken that connection. Like, I mean,
Right.
growing up, like my mom would always like make us put on like extra sunscreen
Right.
because she didn't want us to get too dark. Because
Mm.
growing up in the 70s as a Filipino woman
Right.
in California, the only brown people that she knew worked outside, and the darker your skin got, it wasn't
Right.
a sign of leisure. It was a sign that you
No.
worked outside. And
Right.
so for us to like reclaim, like, no, like we want to
Wow.
be outside, we want to
Yeah.
do that. Like it's a
Hmm.
reclaiming that. And like even what you're saying, like there's like a redemption for the Black community around being outside, because like as you notice, like typically when you were outside you were the help, like,
Right.
and you and just this dude just like casually calls that out, and it's something that
Hmm.
you had to learn about and then
Hmm.
learn how to like reintegrate and invite people into, which is just wild.
Right. It's, I mean, it's just, yeah, like you said, like, I think the relationship, like Black folks' relationship to the land, like with American soil
Yes.
was like all surrounded by slavery. Like we
Yes.
had to, like, we cultivated land, like we like, and so then I think that this idea um, of the land being for a utility purpose rather than a purpose to be able to be connected to it and enjoy was
Whoa.
really stripped in a lot of ways. And so then, but then like also you see this beautiful robustness through women like Harriet Tubman, who was
Yes.
able to read the stars and read the weather. And like, so Black folks have even in the midst of having a fragmented relationship due to systemic sin, have had like a deep, rich, intimate relationship with the land
Bro.
where I think people don't really talk about that. Like people don't
Yes.
see, like when we talk about like the first naturalists and the first folks, like besides indigenous folks of the Americas, like then we gotta look at Black folks like in the second wave, because like a lot of Black folks were really leading, like were learning it from indigenous folks and really a part of that process of being connected to the land in new ways. And so,
Bro, Phil,
yeah,
dude, that was profound. Thank you for that.
no, for
Like,
sure.
dang, man, I'm gonna think about that for a bit. All right, here's the second question I want to talk to you about
For
that I
sure.
didn't get to talk to you about last time. So like, and it's only gotten like more like a little bit crazier as things have happened,
Yeah.
as things do in our current landscape. But
Mhm.
so like when I went to school, critical theories were still in their inception.
For sure.
And now and so like we would learn a little bit about critical theories, but it was like, like a random part of a philosophy or cultural theory or sociology, and
Right.
like it was just like, hey, this is a new thing that's coming. But now like critical theories have been around for a little bit longer, being taught in grad
Right.
school. Particularly we're having a lot of conversations in the US around critical race theory for a lot of
Hmm.
reasons, and I know that you've done some work on that. So can you just, in your experience, for the people that are listening to
Yeah.
us and thinking, about critical theories or critical race theory in particular. Like, what's your experience with it? What's super helpful that helps contextualize what it means to be a Christian, and what are some things that like maybe aren't as helpful, if you feel like there are any?
For sure. Yeah. I mean, that's a big question.
Yeah, I know. Sorry.
I think
and then fix it and like say it clearly.
No.
But not
Yeah.
like.
Oh man. I think my experience with it is that I think it helps us. It's a lens that helps us see systemic sin and the many nuances that it holds when it comes to the conversation about, I think, racial justice.
Yes.
I think, and I think that's what I really love about it, is that I think it helps us to see the multi-layeredness that is within systemic sin. And I think it was it Esau McCaulley was talking about this? There was a psalm that said, Lord, forgive me for the unseen sins that I've committed.
Yes.
And I think that's really it's very true of
yes.
I think it helps us to realize and to see the unseen sins that I think that people commit America, and I think really Western spaces that they commit every day, and
yes.
that I commit every day, being within a Western construct. And so I think that's really why I really love that, especially as a follower of Jesus. I think it really aligns with this, with the values of seeing the fullness and the multitudes of sin, but also seeing what does it look like to repent? What does it look like to address? What does it look like to dismantle this and to really root this out of and to cultivate a beloved community? Because if we're not willing to address it, then I think, and we don't see it, then it's still there. If I say I can't see, just because I can't see the worms in the ground, doesn't mean it's not there. It doesn't mean that they're not cultivating their own community. So why would I think differently about when it comes to racism? Just because I might not be able to see it on an undertone level doesn't mean it's not there, and doesn't mean it's not in the systems that I inhabit. And so
even tying it to what you were just saying, forms of critical theory help us understand why there might be a fractured relationship between people of color and the outdoors.
Right.
Because there have been systems built that have predominantly used Black and brown bodies to, create leisure for people in power. And so forms of what you're saying is that these theories can help expose the things that we didn't even see, like that guy that talked to you in the woods, he didn't even know that was a thing. You didn't even necessarily know, but then through a certain lens, what I hear you saying is through that certain lens, then that can help expose the things that we didn't know that we were doing.
Right. Yeah. And I think we're because we're being human, we've all experienced malformation. Yes. I think, and I love, we talked about this with Resma's book. Yes. I think that's what I really love when he talks about, In My Grandmother's Hand, when he talks about this idea of trauma is really malformation. And the ways that I think I really connect that spiritually is that I think we really experience a lot of malformation in a sense of we've been encountered by systems and structures and toxic ways of being. And I think one of the things that I think I'm always pushing as we talk about critical race theory is that I think a theory remains a theory until it goes into our bodies and until it's lived out. Yes. And I think that's really important for me, is that I think, yes, I'm for us understanding history and us understanding and dissecting how we got here. But I think transformation really happens in the body and in the systems of the body. And I think when we live that out, especially as followers of Jesus who follow an embodied faith leader who is a rabbi, when we think about this idea of following after Jesus and living an embodied faith, I think we have to allow it to hit in our bodies and ask, man, where was I malformed? Man, was it the books that I read, the ways in which my parents told stories about who and who did not belong, the ways in which my school pictured white people in a certain way and then people of color in a certain way, and the language that we use, and so many different things. I think we have to really start with us when it comes to that understanding, and then kind of work our way. Yeah.
Right. No, I think what's so interesting, Phil, the way that you're talking about it, it actually resonates a lot. Like in our community up here in Bellingham, there's a lot of recovery work. So there's a lot
Yeah.
of people that do work with like addiction recovery and things. And so we do a lot of like 12 steps experiences and programs. And so I've gone through 12 steps a couple of times. And we talk about all the ways that in some of these recovery programs, all the ways like our family systems, like, to use your language, malformed us into like ways that we understand affection, ways that we self-nurture, and all these different things. And so that is a familiar framework, I think, for most people in the church. We understand that when we like perhaps sin or we act that are in ways that aren't in line with the way of Jesus, like it's not just about like stopping the action or the activity, the behavior modification. That's just like cutting the head off the weed. Like we need to do the work of like cultivating and getting down in the roots of what caused that and pull up that. So it's not just continued behavior modification, but actually the actual root of the issue. And so what you're saying, what I just think is so helpful for me is that that's also true in the ways that we understand gender, in the ways that we understand like sexual identity, the ways that we understand like our racial, like the ways that we relate with people with other ethnic heritages. And that to me is like one of the things that I'm hearing from you and things that I've learned from you the best is like, yes, it just does a similar set of work that I'm familiar with, but just puts it in a lens that like I just hadn't been exposed to yet, which is so helpful.
No, for sure. No, I appreciate it. Because I think, like it's, man, and I think it aligns with Jesus, like following Jesus and it being a journey. Like, I think a lot of people, especially a lot of white people, they asked during the resurgence of the civil rights movement last year, what can I do?
Yes.
Like, which is not a bad question, but I think it puts utility before humanity and asking, man, what does that mean? How do I sit with this? Rather than like cultivating this space of like doing, which is like very Western of like, okay, fix, do, gotta get my hands on it, rather than being like, okay, like let's do an internal reflection. And then let's realize that this isn't something that I can fix in a moment, or is this something that I can just be performative with? But it's a lifelong journey that there's gonna be some amazing moments, some discouraging moments, some moments where you want to say, gosh, like this is so messy. I don't want to do this anymore. But I think God is calling me to this because I know my wholeness is in this, and my connection to the rest of my community and humanity is being lived out in this moment. And so I think, I
love that, because it's like, how many times, like I'm thinking of when like David was confronted for like murder, and you know, and Nathan comes to him and like tells him like, yo, you were the dude, you were the guy, like you stole the poor man's like sheep and then like killed him. And his first response wasn't like, let me go fix it. It was to lament. And so that's what I hear you saying in some version is like, hey, when you were exposed to this, it's not about instantaneously like going to fix it. It's like lamenting and seeing how we are perpetuating the systems that we're seeing and the ways that they're harming people. And that's super helpful.
Yeah, okay. No, for sure.
Bro, here's the last question for you. Is the other thing, like you were mentioning malformation and you were mentioning the ways that you were misformed. You and I both have like a deep love for contemplative Christian spirituality. Like that's been like that was one of the things we were connecting on. So what are some of the like contemplative practices that right now that that are impacting you? What are some things that you're learning out of those practices? Like you mentioned one earlier, like just the idea of grounding. And like, are there other ones? And what are you learning?
Definitely. Can we go back a little bit to CRC real quick? Because I think there was one part that I wanted to just chime in real quick.
Absolutely.
Was that I think one thing that's not helpful that's with like critical race theory, I think is, and it's not even within critical race theory. I think it's an argument that's going on outside of it.
Totally.
is
Bro, I totally even
the
forgot that I asked this part of the question.
oh, no worries, no worries. You're good. You're good. You're good. Is that I think people are powerful systems are arguing that they're using critical race theory as the basis for an argument rather than I think looking at the experiences of people's humanity. And like I think just kind of going back to the like unpacking that a little bit is that I think rather than believing the history, the experience, the words of people of color, I think they're trying like there's a lot of people in certain spaces, in certain thought spaces that are really trying to argue the theory and not have to really deal with systemic racism. Because I think the question we gotta ask is not, is critical race theory a way to be able to see humanity in a new light? I think the real question we gotta ask that I think Martin Luther King and the people of the civil rights movement were asking is, will we address and abolish systemic racism, or will we continue to do what Dr. Willie Jennings calls in practice moral constipation and drag our feet toward allowing all people to experience wholeness, flourishing, reparations, and the justice that God intended.
Yes.
And so I think that's something that I realize is going on within this conversation, is that I think people really want to, like powerful systems, like white systems, really want to theorize. But when it comes to the experience, rather than really listening to, honoring, and uplifting the experiences of the people who have been harmed and dehumanized and marginalized. And so,
bro,
yeah.
that is such a helpful way to think about because anytime something becomes an ideological set, it becomes an abstraction.
Right.
From lived experience, and it's significantly easier to talk about abstractions because it's just ideas, you know.
Right.
And rather than what you're saying, which is like, man, these are like critical race theory and critical theories in general really just put like more formulaic understandings that are birthed out of the lives of people. So you could just, I mean, you can deal with the theory, that's fine, but actually it's probably more important to deal with and listen to the people, like the experience of marginalized people.
Right.
And prioritize that in the ways that you think. Is that what I hear you saying?
Oh yeah, 100%. Because I think the theory comes out of lived experience, comes out of the people who have experienced this, who have studied this, who have really allowed their bodies to speak and allowed their bodies to tell a story about history, the way it was actually encountered, and like the ways in which our systems really are built today. And so I think, and it's the same, like when we look back, if we're looking back on, I love talking with you because I think we love talking about history, context, nuance. And so I think when we look back at the 60s, the argument was, well, pursuing justice is just communism.
Yeah.
Like that was the same argument that was back then, was like, oh, it's just communism. And so then you were able to really put people into brackets like, oh, that's just communism. Oh, that's just communism. And so then, like, as you're saying, like, you begin to put people just in theory boxes rather than having to deal with the root sin that I think people are participating in, perpetuating. And so,
yeah, because also like the moment that you can like disembody that or otherize that in some way, or like make the word a pejorative, it actually, like, you don't deal with the experiences like you said, but also like kind of what I hear you saying too, and if I get this wrong, you can feel free to correct me, is also like theories don't leave the room for all the nuance of the lived experience, you know, like, so like, sure, that's like a general way that you can understand what it's been like to live in a marginalized narrative in the history of America or whatever, from this perspective or that perspective. But really, there's like, the thing that it's trying to get at is to help. All critical theories is just trying to help you understand the lived experience of marginalized people. That's
Exactly.
And how systems have been built and how they have affected them.
Right.
And so like, just do that. Like, just listen to people that you know.
Right. Just listen to, like, that's the thing. It's like when people are arguing, it's like, so you're arguing my humanity. Like, you're able to, like, as someone who's not affected, who benefits off of this, you're able to argue something that doesn't affect your humanity, or actually it does. Hello, it does. Little do they know is that, like, when I think it was Frederick Douglass who said, the folks who are enslaving other people are actually captive by slavery.
Yes.
And so I think that malformation is coming out. And so it's like, man, you're hurting other people, but you're also hurting yourself and keeping yourself from being able to experience the fullness of God in mutual relationship. So,
bro, let's go.
Yeah, bro. It's wild. There's we could go on, but yeah.
Dude,
yeah.
We'll have to have you, like, we can come back to that at some point. Okay.
Sure.
So like back to the formation thing. So
definitely. Yeah.
Dude, yeah. So what are the like contemplative, like you and I connected over our love of Thomas Merton.
Yes.
And just contemplative prayer in general. And so like what are the things that you're learning in your contemplative practices? Are there practices that you found super helpful, and what are the things that you're learning about God in the midst of that?
Yeah, man. Ooh. I think I'm learning. I think when it comes to contemplative practice, I think one thing that I'm learning that just like is kind of like I think a recentering of core is I think recentering my expectations of where and how I encounter God. Whoa. And I think that for me has been really something that I've been like just really digging through as I walk through therapy and as I like walk through just deeper encounters with God. As I think because I think sometimes when we talk about malformation, I think sometimes we kind of have this expectation of what like a certain spiritual, a set of spiritual disciplines or spiritual regimen looks like, rather than I think if God is fluid and God is actively doing a new thing in different new spaces and new minutes and new times, then I think we can encounter God in moments when we're not able to really do the things that I think we really wanted to do in a season. And I think for me, like we just moved and I feel like I think there's just a million things that are happening. And I'm like, man, I'm not able to be into like the practices that I really was in when we had a secure space. But then God is reminding me of like, and I'm just being really reminded by the Holy Spirit of like, man, I'm here. Like in the ways in which we walk and move, like let's bring those expectations down and let's just be present to the reality of my love being active. Yes. And you don't have to have these expectations to really encounter me. I'm just here.
Yes.
And so,
bro, no, I resonate with that a ton. Like it's like it I just finished Contemplative Prayer by Thomas Merton, and one of the things he said, I texted you as soon as it was done, and I was like, like one of the things that was so impactful for me in the latter part of that book was when he was talking about how as you enter into your contemplative space, as you enter into the space where you are connecting with the one who like lives and moves and holds all things together, like as you just center on that, like one of the most important things is to let go of any experience that you're trying to like hold on to from either like a previous space that you are in or a spiritual experience that you're looking to have. You are literally just trying to find the grounding of your being that is living inside you. And like, like that is just a wild,
so good.
Like, but it does. It's like I think that so much of our like ego constructs, like the ways that we like try to organize our world and control our world, it's so tied to space. So like as you're talking about like your move, like all of a sudden you're like, oh man, like I don't get to control my space anymore. It's like, and so now you're like, oh man, do I get to control my experience or like am I going to feel centered or whatever? And it's and it just throws all of that stuff back up to it. Like to me, it happens every morning when I wake up. Because I have to get up early because like you and I talk, like I have a lot of kids and like I only got like a couple minutes in the morning. So I have to get up early. And if I didn't sleep well or I didn't like I went to bed late, like I was reading too late or like my wife and I had gotten into an argument or whatever. And like I wake up in the morning and there's like so much that feels out of my control. And then like I still go into the same practice, but it just like I bring in all this emotional baggage. I bring in all this stuff. And it takes a sec to be like, okay, like it's not about an experience. It's simply about like being with the one that's holding all things together. And like drawing from that. But like that doesn't mean that's like an easy
No, and like I just, oh man, I think like in like that the thing that I love that, because I think of that verse where it says, my grace is sufficient.
Yes.
And it's like, I think my presence is enough.
Yes.
Like, and like wherever you encounter it, my presence is enough. And like I'm like you just preaching to my soul right now,
yes.
because I think I just see that like as I hear you talking about that, I just see that verse in such a more like open-handed way, where it's like, man, like however I encounter God, and like I think, yes, like we definitely want that quiet time, coffee time,
yes.
you know, like light a candle.
Yes.
But even in like you said, like even in the baggage that we bring, like God is saying, well, like it's just whatever you bring, that's enough. Like
yes.
you don't, and I love that so much. Oof.
Bro, yeah, no, and I think for me, one of the things that like personally, like I don't know, like if you feel this too, but like, I mean, my grandmother recently passed away, and I was down in
sorry.
I was oh thanks but like I was down in Palm Springs, and my whole family grew up Catholic, like because the Philippines were colonized by the Spanish, and so but like that, I mean, like similar stories, like now like some of Filipinos are like some of the most like adamant faithful followers, like out of like that kind of colonial rule. God is bringing like beauty out of the ashes, and so like my grandmother had this rosary that she prayed. She had a ton of them, but I asked my mom, and I was like, hey mom, like, can you just grab me one of grandma's like Nana's rosaries, because I want to learn to pray on one. And like I don't resonate with the Hail Mary, like that's just not so like. But what I did was I still, religious traditions all over the place have prayer beads as like a tactile way to like move through an experience. And so I've been using my grandmother's rosary as like a prayer experience, and like I just do like the Jesus prayer, but like the Jesus prayer is like, Lord God, have mercy on me, a sinner. But like I don't resonate with that totally, because I'm not predominantly a sinner. I'm like also redeemed, and I'm also a son of the Most High God. So like I created like a threefold prayer set where I run through the rosary beads and just say, Lord God, have mercy on me, a sinner. Lord God, have mercy on me, a saint. Lord God, have mercy on me, your son. And then I'll say in our Father, and a glory be. And then, and bro, it like, because also I knew my grandma prayed on that rosary for years. And there's something about connecting to that lineage, even though it's a different spiritual tradition, even though like there's so much I don't resonate with that part of my spirituality anymore. But man, like that was something like that I've learned recently.
I love that.
Just like freaking connecting with that history that at least evangelicalism, like I just like began to just cut myself off from. And man, like it's a wild thing to know, like that little physical thing, like my grandmother prayed for me on for years. Like it was just wild. So.
Wow. Yeah. Oh.
Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah.
Okay. So here's
that's holy.
It was, man.
That's holy.
That's the first time I've actually said,
like
when you were talking about that, like, I was just like that was resonating with me in a different way. Okay. So is there anything else that you like want to like let the Restless Hearts community know about, or like just like things that you've been thinking and learning?
Yeah, I mean, that's a big one. That's a big one again. I think what have I been learning? I think God is faithful. I think that's what I've been learning again and again. It's like I think I want to go basic, because I think that's just, God has been pulling me back into like just the basics. But I think I think wherever you find yourself, God meets you. And I think that's just good news. And I think that's good news that I think we all need in the midst of, I think, so much upheaval and so much disorientation. Is that I think that God is still doing a new thing, and like wherever you find yourself, God meets you there. And I think that's just good news, especially I think
Bro, no, that's good, man. Thanks, Phil. I need that reminder too. Like that's so good. Okay, so like, where can people follow you? Like, if we want to hear more of your thoughts, more of the things that you're thinking and processing, how can we follow along with your process and see your outdoor pics, your like your family, your ministry? How can we connect with that?
Yeah, so y'all can follow me. I'm on Instagram at Philip Lewis underscore. Just yeah, Philip Lewis underscore. You can find me on Instagram. That's probably my main platform. And then you can find me on Facebook if you want to be Facebook friends. Just let me know that you heard from the pod. You heard about me from the podcast because I'm not really I don't just
No,
friend random folks
you don't
because
want
I mean
that
you
feed.
know
You want to keep that feed
right,
clean. Yes,
right.
that's
Because
right.
I got words on my feed because
Yes, yeah,
I friended random. So just let me know that yeah you heard about the podcast and I'll make sure to friend you. But I think those are the two places you can find me. If you're in Seattle, you want to grab coffee, I'm always down to grab coffee. If you want to grab food, I'm a foodie.
Yeah, let's
So
go. All right, yeah,
yeah,
we'll put all that in the link in the show notes, and we'll be sure to link it on our Instagram as well. But Phil, thank you so much, my friend, for
no,
being
thank
on here.
you.
We're gonna have you back again, and we're like there was more stuff to talk about on all
Oh,
of
for
those
sure,
subjects. So we'll have to do
for
that soon.
sure.
All right, thanks, man.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, like it, subscribe to our channel, and turn on notifications so you can stay tuned for all of our content.